Hey everybody, welcome to the stream. Tonight, gonna be coloring some stuff, nothing special. Joined finally by my beautiful wife, Kimberly. She's right there. She's right there behind, but also on a camera that has a really slow frame rate right now.
Is it
because
slow?
It's not plugged directly into the computer, because I'd have to unplug my hard drive. We're a mess, is what I'm saying. We're a big old mess.
Not me.
No, Kim's not a mess as a person. Beautiful as a person. But listen, her mic doesn't have the same setup I do, which I have to fix, which will be fixed by next stream. Mm-hmm. But for now, I'm having her talk a little bit louder than normal.
His exact instructions were to eat the microphone, so
yes.
Let me know if you guys can't hear me, if I'm not eating it enough.
And as always, feel free to @ me in the chat there, @ Dave Raposa, @ Kimberly Raposa, because Kim's going to be reading the chat too. And yeah, I'll just continue on with these fills, getting real close, super close to the end of this. I'm really happy. This is page 16. Got what after this? I think there's a total of 23 pages. So about 8 pages left. And then got to do the title and end pages, which is good. I feel very positive. Almost all of it is done, especially the hard stuff. The hard stuff is done, which is nice. But it's starting to come together, and the whole idea I had for it's feeling good. I feel like it's one of those things where sometimes, you have like a project that you want to do, and there's like an idea of it, and then there's the execution of it. And I feel like I was able to actually execute this the way I wanted to, which is rare. So that's very pleasing to me. And when this is all done, then gonna do a Kickstarter just to get some pre-orders accounted for. And then from there, print the book. Already got some tests going for what materials to use for the book. So that's pretty cool. I want it all to feel like a complete package. I don't want it to be like all this work goes into the art and then none of the work goes into the print. The print is obviously part of the art, so that has to look really good. And that'll be hopefully a relatively smooth process. I've had it go not smooth in the past with like the Steve books and all, so we'll see. It's always crazy. You never really know with self-publishing stuff and going through print facilities overseas, like all that stuff is very difficult to manage, especially when it comes to like consistent quality and that sort of thing. Yeah. Well,
I did see somebody ask if, I think on the last stream,
yeah,
if this, once this is published, if it's going to be shipping in Europe.
That's the plan. The plan is to have it ship everywhere. It's just going to come down to mostly it's going to come down to a couple things. It's going to be just the sheer amount. Is it worth it, to do? Hold on. Sorry, I have to check something. What just happened? Okay. So I have to see like how many we end up selling and if it makes sense to ship every single like copy to different facilities all around the world, because that's a whole other headache to deal with. But if there's demand enough for it and we get a ton of pre-orders, I mean, I'll feel better about doing all that. But if we don't get like a ton of pre-orders in Europe and whatnot, then I'll probably end up having to charge like way more for shipping, which I don't really want to do. So I got to kind of figure that out. I don't know.
Someone asked.
I'll talk to the middleman dude about it and see what he thinks.
Someone asked if you've done animation.
Yeah, a little bit. Like, I'm not good at it. It's just stuff that I've kind of played around with. But I don't have like, you know, any sort of a background in that. It's just something I would play around with here and there.
Are you painting in RGB and then converting to CMYK for print?
No, I'm not. The way that works with this is I more or less am like, I'm working RGB, and I mean, thankfully I already have an idea of what's going to work for the final print. But generally speaking, with this sort of thing, if you're rendering in like a kind of a lot of values, like very painterly, sort of the way I'm doing it, then you kind of get away with it a little bit. You'll lose a little bit of the color, but it's okay. Like, I'll show you what this would look like. Let me pull this page up and go to image, and you just change mode to CMYK and then just flatten. Okay. So you can see that it didn't actually change it a whole lot. It changed it a little bit. It dulled some of the colors, but nothing dramatic. And I know that just from having like some experience printing things, that when you render stuff out like this and it has a lot of tonal variation, some of the more specific colors that would get lost, they might still get lost, but it's not as dramatic. Whereas if you had a character that was solely a one flat solid color that would go away with CMYK, then that would be very obvious because it's only one flat color versus this, which is a lot of different colors. So it's not as noticeable, but it's definitely noticeable. See that? It's just not as like bright and vibrant. Oh, whoops.
All right, it still looks pretty.
Yeah, I think it still looks good. It's just not perfect.
It loses like some of the glow, it feels like.
Yeah, it does. It loses the glow.
Jimmy Lay asks, "Hey Dave, hello Kim. I'm curious what your thoughts are with showing up every day for your art. I find with my current schedule, showing up each day isn't so straightforward at times."
Showing up?
Mm-hmm.
Showing up like just sitting at the desk and working?
Showing up for your art every day. Showing up every day for your art.
That kind of sounds like showing up for your kids, the way people talk about that.
Mm-hmm. Like being present, maybe.
Yeah. Some days are better than others, you know. Some days I'm like super inspired. Some days I'm just kind of doing it. But either way, I'm getting work done. It's more about putting in the time for me. As long as I'm putting in the time and the effort and I'm making progress, I feel good. But I don't treat art like I always need to be inspired in order to do it, because I just feel like I'd be waiting forever for that. I more or less am hoping that I get rolling, I get warmed up, and then something will happen. But if something doesn't happen, I'm just going to do the work I know how to do and finish that for the day. So not every day is like good ideas or anything like that. Like, it's not like I'm always crushing it when it comes to the content I'm producing or whatever. It's more or less that I am consistently putting in hours, and I am experienced enough in doing it that I know that, you know, I can get basic rendering and drawing done in that time. When I really need inspiration, it's mostly for like the very beginning. It's when I start sketching. Like I need to really want to do something cool, and I know that when I'm given a description for a job or something like that, that initial energy that I get from the client sending that stuff over or talking with me about it, I have to then sketch after that, or I'll lose that drive that I need to, really make something cool.
In addition to that, it was saying that I'm not experienced or knowledgeable enough yet. I'm often having to spend time researching and learning, but I struggle with it feeling like a convenient excuse.
It can be an excuse, what, researching and learning?
Like, I guess, spending that time doing that instead of...
Well, you can procrastinate in any number of ways. If you feel like you know yourself better than I know you, so if that's how you procrastinate, is you just sit there and you endlessly look for something that's going to prolong the time that takes you to get started, then clearly that's not great. But yeah, I mean, if that's super important to your process too, then that's a whole other thing, specific to whatever you're doing. If that's truly how you find some like excitement to move and start creating stuff, then maybe that's okay. But if you notice that you prolong the inevitable by looking at like Pinterest and shit, then probably stop and just sit down and do work and correct course along the way. It's more important that you just get started on the things you have to do.
I feel like when I'm procrastinating, I don't call it out as procrastination. It's more like I really should just do this other thing. And then I just go do it. I just know that something else is more important, but I don't really call out my procrastination as procrastination.
Yeah, but that's different than like having to do something. It's like, when you have homework to do and you're like, oh, but I could also clean my room. Mm-hmm. It's like that's not good.
Is X-Men 97 the one that you've been watching?
Yeah.
Christian Butler says it's really been inspiring me to look into animation.
Yeah, it's really good. Like I had seen some of I watched like the intro for it initially and some clips like here and there online before I started watching it. And my main takeaway was I was kind of like worried that maybe it felt a little stiff in the animation style, kind of leaning more towards almost like a drawn over like 3D look. But after watching it and seeing some of the more like elaborate scenes and some of the intense stuff that happens in the show, it really kind of like, I was like, oh, okay, this is awesome. So I'm with you. I think it's super cool. I really like the writing. I don't know what I was expecting. I guess I was expecting more like the old show where the writing's like fine, but the writing in the storytelling, just in this adaptation of it, the new version of the X-Men is awesome. Like it's really good, like genuinely good. I was not expecting it to be as cool as it is. I don't know what I was expecting, but not that. I opened up the window just because I wanted some cool air in here, and the loudest bird in the world
like
is
right in front of
right
you.
outside. What is it doing? It's nighttime, bird. Go to sleep.
Gondo asked a question. Do you have a streamlined way to manage your layers? Or do you just make more if needed as you go?
Oh my God.
Got any recommendations to get more comfortable with billion layers management?
Hold on, I have to shut the window.
It's so loud. It's like it's
right
talking.
outside
It's
the
like
window?
talking to you.
My shirt says "Kill all artists," by the way, with a big gun on it. I had a training session this morning. Just working out with a personal trainer, and I forgot I was wearing the shirt, and I was just like, I am an artist, okay? Like, I don't want to actually kill people. I'm not some weirdo. I mean, whatever. Sorry. Do I have a streamlined way to manage my layers?
Mm-hmm.
No, not really. I just kind of know what they all are, and sometimes I group them together, but these don't really get passed off to anybody, so I don't care. I know what all of them are, so I don't know. I've never really thought about it. Like I don't need too much to keep it all organized. I can kind of see where they all are. It's organized mess. It's in my head.
Oh, do I have any TMJ exercises or stretches? My jaws have been killing me. Not really.
TMJ.
I know people get Botox to help relieve some of that, like really strong muscle. I've also seen people do like facial massages where they like stick their hand inside and they're like releasing that muscle from inside. But I wouldn't really know what to do or how to explain that. Sorry.
What is TMJ?
It's your muscle and your tendon, and it's like overworked. It's like really, really strong in your jaw.
Oh,
so
okay.
it's that pain that you have because it tends to clench, or some people clench and that's why they have it. There's different reasons why you can have it. It can just be an overworked muscle, so it's a lot bigger and stronger. Some people end up with like really wide jaws if that muscle's like really big.
Okay. To anybody who's wondering why my wife is talking about this stuff, she's also a nurse. That's why. If you're like, why is your wife suddenly helping with medical problems?
I feel like a lot of people know about TMJ. If you know, like, if you have it, people know about it.
Right.
I've heard of like face yoga. That's a thing people do. They do that for like wrinkles and jowls. I think it can help with TMJ if you look stuff up. Not sure. Christian Butler said swole goals for you working out.
What are my swole goals?
No, just hashtag swole goals.
Oh, okay. Just in general, swole goals.
Tell that to our kid.
Yeah, every day, every time I have a training session, you know, you've heard me say it before on the stream. I just come inside and he goes, "Why are you still fat?" And I go, "Boy, I am trying. All right, cut me some slack. I'm not even
But he did say something
fat,
really
boy."
sweet. He was like, I like you fat.
Yeah, it's true.
You're just so squishy."
And if you're like, "Dave, you're not fat," I know that. I know that. All right. But my son sees any sort of belly rising from my midsection, and he goes, "That's more than enough."
I mean, I'm soft in the middle too, and they just tell me all the time, "It's so squishy." We love it because it's so soft. And I was like, thanks.
I know you can't be like, "No, I'm not."
No,
Hey!
I'm trying to do the complete opposite of what I grew up with.
Yeah.
With like the negative self-talk, and I'm like, isn't it beautiful? I had babies. You guys used to live in there. And meanwhile, I'm like going to bar class at 6 a.m, killing myself. George V says, "Hello, genius Dave. Watching you for years, honestly." Look, I'm reading it like a teleprompter, okay?
Genius Dave, what's up? What was the question?
"Hello, genius Dave. Watching you for years, honestly. Don't you think that most of artists that succeed in this domain and put time for portfolio are stable financially before getting recognized?"
What? feel like I have
Do
to
you
look at
think that they are financially stable before they get recognized? Or do you think that there are artists getting recognition before they are financially stable?
I think it's mostly artists are getting recognition before they're financially stable. I think that's way more the case. Absolutely. Like I feel like I'm pretty rare. Like we're doing great, but like I know just from people I know and just experience myself in the industry, it's like I'm an outlier. But I've also been doing it as a freelancer for nearly 20 years, so it's like having that much of a like lead on that stuff, like building career over that amount of time, making connections. It's like you just end up with, for lack of a better word, like a pretty large Rolodex of names of clients and things, so it's easier to maintain. Obviously it's harder to build that, but once you do have that snowball rolling, it's that's already in motion, so I can kind of feel safe that I have that network. But yeah, like most artists I know in general, like just generally speaking, aren't on that other side of it of being super stable. That's not like everybody, obviously, but a large part, I would say.
If you guys have questions, make sure that you're adding me, Kimberly, please. This is a really important one. Cody Lambert says, Dave, are you a fan of the movie She's All
That? Honestly, I wasn't like... That was one of those movies that happened at just the right time for me to not be interested, where like everybody was into it, and it was like not even like a cult favorite, just like a favorite of everybody. And because of that, I wasn't into it. I was one of those kids. So there's that. I missed out on a lot of things because I felt that way.
Because he was too cool.
Yeah, it was definitely too cool. And I was like, all the stuff you guys like is stupid. You should like what I like. That's very cool, which is just a very young person thing to do.
I feel like everyone goes through that.
Of course.
That's like a phase that you're supposed to go through, where your world revolves around you.
You guys are all normal.
Yeah.
I'm nuts.
Well, that's dumb. But yeah, I think that if you don't,
I pee my pants on camera. You guys don't do anything crazy.
If you don't have a little bit of selfishness, you can't really, have success. Fill in the blank, whatever. If you don't set yourself apart and pee on camera like Dave did,
you won't make it.
I'm telling you right now, give up.
I will say this. I ran into, like, just in this past week on Twitter, I kept seeing that thing again. It pops up every now and then of young artists who think that, like, artists who have any sort of following owe them something. Mm-hmm. And it's the funniest thing ever.
Oh, your shirt is from that movie. That's why he asked that.
Yeah.
See, that's how out of touch he is.
But specifically, what I'm talking about,
sorry,
the people on Twitter, I feel like so bad. Like, just reading through that stuff. I will say this: if you think that way, if you're an artist and you think that way about other people, and I'm saying this to those young people, this is so mean of me to say, but I can almost guarantee you're going to fail with that attitude. I can almost guarantee it, because nobody succeeds with that type of mindset. They just don't. Like, people who resent other people for not doing something that they think they should do just for them, it's like,
well, any sense of
just
entitlement
doesn't work. Yeah, entitlement. That's all it is. I mean, it's horrible. Like I see that stuff. I'm like, I feel bad. I'm like, man, I don't know what is happening, where that mindset's coming from. Maybe it was always around and I just didn't see it because I never had access to those people. But it's so sad. It really was like breaking my heart, like talking to them, because I was trying to talk to them and just not really reason with them necessarily. And I'm not trying to like talk them out of what they believe, but just trying to explain like where that mindset gets you. And I feel like I'm only saying the most obvious shit in the world, like stuff you'd find in like a fucking fortune cookie, you know, just like general, not even like crazy advice. And it just was like, I was like, how are these basic principles not coming across? And it was just so sad. And I want to say that I feel bad. I hope that if any of you are watching this, any of the people that I talk to, that you can find like why that's such a terrible way to think and feel about other human beings. That like other people owe you something like that. But man, it's heartbreaking to see that stuff from young people. Because like there's this weird thing where people, it's almost like they just can't relate to another human being. Like the empathy is just kind of gone. To think that like every professional artist wasn't at some point in their life at your level is so disconnected from reality. It's like every single person you've ever met was born a baby. They might have had any number of things to help them out along the way,
or any number of struggles that they had to overcome.
Yeah, either way. But everybody is like you. Generally speaking, everybody's like you. And you know, I didn't go to college. I didn't have any art teachers. I got everything I ever needed to learn art off of the internet. And the only reason I succeeded was because I worked every single day without skipping almost any days. I didn't take weekends. I didn't go do holidays. I didn't do anything. I was so obsessed with making this my life's pursuit, my whole world, that I did it for like 14 to 16 hours a day, literally every day, for at least the first like 12 years of my career, or 10 to 12 years. And I just, you know, I have no other way to to like explain it to people that like there is no easy way. Like let's say the biggest artist in the world shared your work. Then what? Then what? You don't get anything from that. Like you just
they don't work for you. Yeah.
Like I'll tell you just as an example of that. Early on in my career, the biggest people that like, you know, like I would work with huge names. And when I was like 19, like early on, did nothing for me. I didn't get anything from it. Like it didn't lead to more stuff. And then I would, you know, I did all my like Ninja Turtle portraits. And Kevin Eastman, one of the creators of Ninja Turtles, reached out to me. And it was really cool. He didn't give me anything. Like he didn't give me a job. He didn't like send my name up the food chain to somebody else. Like none of that happened. And I just can't express enough that like it's so self-directed, your pursuit in something like this. And artists, they're very, you know, in just to be general, and this obviously isn't the case for everybody, but so many of them are like self-serving first, you know? Like it's, you like think of like the general artist, whether it's a musician or writer or anybody, like they're so obsessed with their own everything inside of themselves. Like it's not like they go outward all the time and are like helping everybody. It's like you just can't expect these people to lend you a hand, and when they do lend you a hand, you can't expect that to save your life or do anything major for you. There's a 1 in a million chance that could happen to you, but it's so rare. It's so rare.
The gist of the entitlement was, if you like my art and I'm a small artist and you see that, you should retweet it. What is the point of liking it? You have a bigger audience. You should be sharing my stuff so that my stuff gets in front of a lot of eyes. I'm entitled to that if you like my stuff. That's the entitlement of like, if you like it, then share it because you have a big reach.
It's the you might as well.
Yeah.
And you go like, no, it has nothing to do with you might as well. It's just, it's everybody's different than you. But yeah, it was just very sad to see that that was something that was like all over the place. But it's one of those ideas where you think surely people don't actually think this and apply logic to this and believe it. Like that's crazy. Like nobody believes this. And then I'm like, oh, a lot of people believe this.
Yeah.
Like this, somebody failed you.
Jacobo says, so if you're an artist, marry a chick who's richer than you and pee on camera? Got it. So much knowledge. I like that I give off the impression that I'm richer than you.
Yes. I actually told Kim that. I was like, you look like you come from money.
Yeah. And I was like,
she doesn't.
Oh boy.
She does not.
You want to see where I came from? You want to see where I grew up?
Just gunshots in her neighborhood and big signs that say lock your doors. I wouldn't say it was incredible.
Yeah. And then you're like, oh, you're just like me. I did have somebody ask me, who was that guy? Did he work with
He was like a publishing guy.
Okay.
We were at Comic-Con.
Mm-hmm. He asked me, I don't know. I don't think I give off this air, but he asked me if my sweater was Angora. And I looked at the tag right in front of me. I was like, it's cotton. It's a cotton sweater. I don't know what to tell you. I know this is very disappointing to you because I give off some type of air, but...
I would just say to anybody who's interested in, just succeeding in this stuff, it's like, you can't depend on anybody else. You like, it would be nice and you should network, you should talk to people, make friends, have a community, everything like that. But it's going to come down to your output. What are you doing? What are you working on? Are you yourself? Are you skilled? Like, can you deliver on things? And then there's luck, and then there's any number of, then there's just like a feeling even of like, certain people know something's going to be cool before other people, and they have like a style that feels like almost, I don't know, like they're tapped into something that you can't quite put your finger on, but it's going to be the next thing or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's like there's so many weird variables. You can never really figure that stuff out and be like, if I do this, I'll get this. It's just not how it works. So you kind of have to just put in effort, try real hard, and just love what you do, regardless of what anybody else is doing or saying to you or helping you with or not helping you. Just do what you're going to do. That's it. Like, honestly. The best thing that I ever did was start doing streams and things where I regularly help people, and I would talk to people on Skype and stuff and make friends and try to help, and everybody who was my peer in the community, like, oh, that's a big one, by the way, before I just gloss over that. It's more about your peers than it is about pros, because for the amount of professionals that I had like met when I was young, they didn't talk to me. They didn't have like regular relationships with me. That wasn't something that I was like cultivating or getting help from or whatever. That all came from my peers. It's like people that were in my group, people who had similar skill level to me. We all came up together. We all talked to each other. And you can find those groups on Discord or wherever else, but like, that's where you make your connections. You make your connections with real people that you know, and then those people can maybe help you in some way. But yeah, that is a big part of it. And then a lot of that stuff paid off where my peers became successful, then they would offer me things here and there. And then people who were younger than me, who were coming up but watching streams and things, now they hire me for like video game projects because they're in like art director positions. And I just gave my time away for free. And yeah, I just made like community challenges and things like that. And over time, it, like I didn't do it so that it would pay off in some financial manner later. That's just what happened.
Arakian says, what do you think about living in Colorado? Because a lot of artists from the industry mostly go to LA to have more career opportunities, inspiration, and those tricky social contacts. For myself, I can't decide if I need to go to a quieter place or to the heart of the industry.
Yes, Christian Butler. That's how I got that. Living in Colorado, it's kind of it doesn't matter. I could live anywhere. Like I said, freelancing for almost 20 years. That means that I never go into a place. I don't ever go inside of a building and start my work day or anything. So it doesn't matter to me. I could do this anywhere. It could be in Colorado. It could be Mississippi. It could be in Indonesia. It doesn't really matter. The whole industry is on the internet. But specifically, Colorado. I love Colorado. Mm-hmm. It's very nice. Great climate.
Great place to have a family.
Yeah. It's wonderful.
TD says, hey, yo, is that blue guy fighting the old lady?
You got it.
Sorry, I'm skipping over some people who didn't at me because I'm just trying to keep up with questions and stuff. So if I don't read everything, if I don't get to your question, make sure you just ask again and tag me. Question for Dave from Enoch. Have you ever struggled with a life balance with social media and self-promotion? If so, what was your solution? Left social over a year, considering a return, but don't wanna.
I hate social media. I really don't like being a part of it. But in terms of what it does, I feel like it's a necessary evil at the moment. So I just use it to, post stuff. I try not to like live on it though. I try not to like really be a part of it in any real way. Like the most I do is what I just said, like on Twitter. But that's kind of like an outlier. And sometimes it's a matter of like, not that I feel any responsibility in this way, but sometimes I'll feel like somebody has to say something about how silly this all is or whatever, and then I'll just put it on Twitter. And that's like about it. And then I usually shut off notifications for that thread and go on about my day. I mean, I'm fairly good with discipline, so I don't get sucked into the hole that much where like I'm checking everything every 2 seconds. I just put my phone down and I have way more than enough to do in the day that I don't feel obligated to like zone in on that and become obsessed. But for the longest time, like before I had a family and before I had a ton of stuff to do, I absolutely got sucked into that crap. And back in the day, that was the forums that existed, essentially like what Discord is now. Just, small communities of artists talking about stuff. And when that happened, I felt like, like I could trick myself into thinking it was important to do that stuff, to be like a part of everything and be a part of conversations and all that stuff. But in reality, you're dealing with just these tiny things, it's like they don't really matter to you. And if you spend all your time doing that and not working on yourself or your career or anything, and then you complain about like how things aren't working out for you, it's like, well, then how much time are you spending on this shit? Like how much time do you spend wrapped up in like internet drama or anything like that? It's like, if you do find yourself doing that, then you could make better use of your time. And it's not super important that you're on these things.
I think social media has that impact on everybody across the board.
Yeah.
You can see, I can see, let's see, like a mom posting an activity with their kid, It's like, dang, I should be doing more activities with mine. It can make you feel like you're not doing enough. It can make you feel that way, but everyone's always putting their best foot forward. It's just not real. It's just not real.
Yeah.
You know? Like, I'm posting that I made sourdough bread 3 times. Thank you very much. And it came out great every time, but I'm not posting that my house is a mess right now and I need to prepare for XYZ and, you know, all the other struggles that are going on. All you see is that I made sourdough bread 3 times.
Yeah, you're great at cooking.
And I'm, yeah, it's like, as far as, you know, I'm killing it. But, you know, it's not real.
Well, it's because, you know, it's like that thing that you get fed where your brain immediately goes to, this person does this all the time because they're better than me. Mm-hmm. Versus like, oh, this is probably just them posting this version of themselves and whatever, who cares? It's like, it's just, I don't know, none of it's good to me. So I try to stay away as much as I can and just focus on, if I'm on there, I'm only posting work. And then I'll interact with some people who like it and, you know, might say a couple things back, and then I try to limit it to that.
Eric says, at what threshold did you guys decide you were ready for kids? What steps did you decide were necessary to give them the best life possible?
Oh, man.
That was a hard question.
Well,
we almost had kids in our first year. Not like whoopsie, but we were talking about it. Like, we were, do we want to do this before we get married? Do we want to go ahead and just, you know, 100%, 110% in?
Yeah. No, I think like there's never the right time. And I think, you know, there are certain things that you can do. Obviously, it'd be nice if you were like super financially stable and all that before you had kids. But also, I like, for me personally, this isn't, you know, advice for everybody. This is just me. For me personally, I do much better with really intense pressure. So when we were finally just like biting the bullet and being like, let's just have kids. Like, we're just getting older. Like, well, let's just do it. We weren't in a house yet. We were just like, whatever.
We're very both, like, we both get wrapped up in like ambitions. And so we tend to keep our plates very full. And it was kind of like, if we don't do it now, then when? Because we're never going to find the, quote, perfect time. But mentally, we were, you know, somewhat prepared. We were at least on the same page with everything. I think that's the biggest benefit that we had going into it. It's just like knowing that, you know, we were both wanting to do it. That's really it. I mean, you can also make that choice after you find out that you're going to be a parent, not necessarily planning for it, and still have a great outcome. But we went into it like both knowing that we wanted to have kids. I mean, we just didn't know when, and then when we eventually decided it was time, I mean, I was finishing nursing school.
Yeah, it wasn't great.
And Dave was working. We were in an apartment. It's just like, it was so stressful. I was on my feet for 12 and a half hours, you know, moving patients around. I was doing over 20,000 steps a day. It was wild. And, you know, studying for tests and all this and that. But there's never a perfect time. There's really just never a perfect time. We just like to make our lives complicated, I think.
And I think, like, the biggest fear I had going into it was that nothing, like, I would just hit the brakes on everything. Like, I thought, like, maybe this was just, like, maybe I wouldn't rise up to the occasion or something. Like, that was like the doubt, you know, just being like, maybe I won't be able to ever save up for a house because the market's so brutal and all that. And I was like, I don't know. And then as soon as we had kids, I just told myself the same way I've done it like a million times in the past with difficult situations, of just being like, all right, it's not going to be easy, but I have to do it. Like, just have to somehow force this to make sense and make a bunch of money and get a house. Like, I became like super driven. That's what happened to me. I just was like obsessive with like getting to a place where we'd be able to make a good living and then, do well enough to get a place and have some comfort and stability there.
I had to make sacrifices too. I quit my job for a number of reasons, but I've always worked, and it was really difficult for me to balance this, like, all of a sudden I'm at home all the time and I'm doing all of the domestic work. Not that I wasn't doing a lot of it before anyway, but
yeah, Kim basically, like, I only worked and Kim did everything else.
Everything. So it was a lot. I had to take on a lot, and I wasn't, technically making I didn't have like a bi-weekly paycheck. I didn't have an income. I had Dave's income and access to the money, but it's not like, it was very difficult for me to
it's like if you're an
not
independent
feel independent
person.
Yes, financially, and or even just feel like, man, I wish I could help financially. I wish I can contribute in that way. And it was so hard for me to wrap my head around, like, I am contributing because I'm taking the burden of everything else,
Yeah.
It took maybe like a solid year of Dave reminding me that, like, I was actually contributing to this, because I just felt so odd not working. But let me tell you, childcare is very expensive, so it made more sense.
Yeah.
Gondo had mentioned something about the streaming. I feel like times are different now. There's a billion streamers already trying to actively engage, whereas there were just like 4 in 2008.
Oh yeah, I mean, it, like, in regards to what?
Like how you streamed every day.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's sort of the thing with everything. It's like I always looked for the thing that was starting to happen that nobody was doing or just wasn't popular yet. Like, I was one of the first people on Patreon before they accepted credit cards even. Like,
For real?
Yeah, like, I was one of the very first. Like, Starvale started on there like forever ago, like before anybody was really using it. And the same thing with streaming, is I just was like, okay, cool, like another like ground floor thing I can like jump in on. And I just found a way to do it. Nobody was doing it. It was like barely like anybody was streaming. And this was, God, I don't even know. Yeah, it must have been 2008, 2007. So that was back when there was no Twitch. Like that, like none of the streaming platforms that exist now had any of it. So, YouTube streaming didn't exist. It was just like Ustream and something else like Justin TV, and then Procreate, or not Procreate. Procreate was the No, sorry. I keep all of these things sound exactly the same. It was called like Procaster or something like that. And the website was just livestream.com, and that's where I was. And yeah, for a while I did it. No, I was streaming before Crystal Crusaders. I was doing it like way before that. Crystal Crusaders was when I was in Boston. I was streaming when I lived in New Hampshire.
Yeah. I can imagine that somebody coming up in this, during 2024 or whatever, the last 5 years, that there's just, it's like exhausting how many options there are. And it's like, where do I even begin? It's like too many options, Whereas if there are only 3 websites where you can stream.
And nobody's doing it.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. Now it's so accessible. I can imagine that it gives you a little bit of that decision fatigue,
Yeah. And it's also just, there's people people have figured it out. Like back then, there was no thing where people knew what it was,
Mm-hmm.
Like that really wasn't a thing. It's like people didn't know how to be like a content creator. Wasn't something anybody called themselves.
Right.
Yeah, maybe it was like 2009 then, I guess. That probably makes sense.
Yeah, you got Wiko in 2008.
Oh, okay, then it was 2008. I'm pretty sure, because I have memories of her as a puppy underneath me.
Okay.
I don't know. I'd have to go back and look. It's been obviously a long time since then.
I know, 16 years.
But all that being said, it's just, yeah, I just happened to get in on that sort of thing back then. And now, yeah, you have like a million options and a million people you're kind of, for lack of a better term, competing with in terms of eyeballs. But I still think it's worth it, you know? It's sort of the same idea as like should nobody start a podcast right now? Because there's like a million podcasts.
Some people
Like, should I not be streaming right now? There's 130 people in here. There's people who have streams with thousands of people. But who cares? I'm just doing it, and I'm hanging out with you, and I'm not doing it for, like, I'm not, like, if success ever came from a stream, that'd be fine. But I'd have to make it my job. I'd have to do it every day to get that momentum and to be favored by whatever algorithm and being suggested in people's feeds and all that crap. Thankfully, I have other stuff that I can do. But I mean, yeah, for me, I don't really care about that. But for anybody getting rolling with it, it's like, yeah, it's a lot of competition. It's a lot of consistency. It's a lot of not going crazy, talking to people for many hours.
Senior Bob says, I'm going through a bad case of burnout. Had to take medicine. Don't want to go through all the details. But what can I do to recover? At this point, anything will help.
Bad case of burnout. I'm going to offer you the advice that my buddy Dan would give, because maybe you're going through something like this. Stop looking at artists. Stop looking at like ArtStation and envying other people's work, or just comparing yourself to people. Let yourself be without all those distractions and just get back to regular drawing for yourself. Listen to music you like. Just let yourself kind of flow through that sort of thing, and stop worrying about who you are versus any other people, or putting that kind of pressure on yourself. More or less, just find why you started in the first place again. I think that that's very valuable, because it can be, you know, a bit overwhelming when you see like people working a certain way or whatever, or you know, whatever's putting pressure on you, and then feeling like you don't measure up or you don't have the ideas or whatever. Sometimes it's helpful just to kind of step out a minute and get back to finding the love that you once had for it.
Yeah, whenever I would feel burnt out as a nurse, just the job itself is so physically demanding and mentally demanding, and sometimes the patients just were awful people. All it took was like one connection to either a coworker who was very thankful that I helped, or a patient who I felt like I made a difference, or even a family member of a patient. And that felt like enough to keep me going. So like finding that reason of like, okay, this is why I'm doing this. This is why I'm, you know, wiping poop because I get to do this where I'm like saving a life, you know?
Yeah, you gotta find out like what it is about you. Like, what's the thing that you once loved? Like, what was your initial I want to be an artist kind of moment? Like, what was it? Like, go back to that, find it again. Like, just plumb the depths. Go back in time. Let yourself discover that. Honestly, one of the bigger things for me in terms of not necessarily burnout, I don't think, that might be the wrong word for it, but just my general like fatigue for the longest time, like years ago, I just felt like I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. Like I would just sit there and I would do the same kind of art over and over every day, and it just felt like it just one day flowed into the next, and I didn't have any like real enjoyment of any of it. I just kind of kept getting the same sort of feedback jobs, everybody wanted me to just stay exactly the same. And I just felt like I wasn't me anymore. Like I wasn't doing something that was me. And I had to just step away completely. Like I stepped away from like the safety of my job. And as a freelancer, that's a big deal. That's a big deal because, you know, you just depend on these clients that you have. And I just was like, okay, I'm just going to get rid of all that because I know what's holding me back and what's making me feel like I can't be myself, what's slowing me down. And it all kind of came down to the fact that I wasn't a good artist as far as drawing was concerned. My fundamentals were weak. I had so many things that I wanted to do, and I was so busy doing these other things that I couldn't ever address that stuff. And outside of that, I wasn't doing work that I necessarily enjoyed anymore. And the style I didn't enjoy. I wasn't happy doing the same kind of paintings and the same kind of lighting and just staying in my comfort zone. So really what I ended up leaning towards was just a career only doing like line art. Like you see me drawing right now, this comic, which is a mixture of like painting and drawing, but all the skills that I gained for this came from that period where I just decided I would only draw, regardless if I got any work or anything happened. So I just started drawing every day and making my line art style for my Starvale comic and just kind of winging it. I was like, I'm just going to figure this out. And I started pushing that part of me forward and making that the thing that was my forefront on all the social media, and just hoping that somebody would hire me to do something that was more along the lines of who I felt I really was. And then that started to happen. And I started to kind of venture outside of that even more so, where I started doing like comedy comics, like the Steve Lichman stuff. It started with this comic called The Insecure Warrior. And I wasn't really thinking about it at the time, but in retrospect, it kind of was just a strength that I always had, that was something that would be like a leg up on other people. Like, I don't know, not all artists are cool with just making fun of themselves or just like using whatever skill they've gained to draw really dumb shit. So I just was like, I could be that person. Let's just make this stupid, funny comic. And I was able to flex this muscle that I always had, but I never really used in my work ever because the illustration never called for it. And when I started to kind of see that there were multiple different ways to come at this, and I could kind of go way back in time to when I was young. It's like when I was a kid, I drew comics. When I was a kid, I just wanted to do silly shit. And even my buddy Dan would tell me, he's like, yeah, you used to tell me back when we first started in like high school that you wanted to be the kind of artist that gets like so skilled and then just draws the dumbest shit possible and just ruins it and have that be the joke. And then I'm like, oh, okay, that's why I did it in the first place. Like, it was this funny thing. It was me being like loose and free with my ideas, and maybe eventually getting good enough to do comics and all this. And when I let myself have the freedom to do that, regardless of if there was a future in it financially, I was so much more free and happy. And like, I just didn't care. And that's when I actually started to experience like real success finally, where I was doing fine before, but it was very much like, it was, the fineness was very much equal with the money. It was like, this is fine. Mm-hmm. And it's fine across the board because I'm not super passionate. So I'm never going to be great at this because I'm that way. It's like, if I'm not crazy about the work's not going to be great. So why would I then get more of this? Or why would it continue to grow if I'm just like kind of feeling down about it all?
This question leads into that. I'm very fascinated by the new indie comic scene. How did you guys, like Koteri Inc., manage to get success in comics? Can you do this with no connections or audience?
Yeah, you can do it. I mean, there's a number of things that go into it. Some of it's luck, but I mean, it's a matter of just doing the work, putting it out there, hoping that it finds an audience, and if it doesn't find an audience, just continue to push and post things up on comics reader sites and do a lot of that research for yourself. Find these places where you can share that work and build that audience and all that, and then grow your content from there until you have a substantial enough base to fund something larger, making like a real book. But that whole period of my life it's the most important thing for me career-wise. To this day, it's like that led to everything.
I have the same thing in me where I wanted to get really good at hip-hop dancing so that I could just surprise people and be like, this is my party trick. And there's no reason for me to be that good, but just be really, really good at it.
Yeah.
So similar, but different,
I mean, yeah, it'd be like dumb, funny things, or, it's great.
I've mentioned this to Dave like multiple times, where I'm like, I send him videos of people dancing. I'm like, I need to learn how to do this so that I can just bust it out one day, because I'm the least likely person to have that up my sleeve, I think. A question was, what's your favorite sandwich?
Chicken Parmesan sandwich.
Yes. I don't
Easy.
know. What's
Next.
Mine is like I like a French dip sandwich.
Yeah, French dip is up there.
That's my tops.
The au jus.
Yeah. That's literally why my name is what it is on like all of my handles. Because of a French dip sandwich.
Wait, Kimmy.
Mm-hmm.
What we should do is we should both. If you remember, did you ever hear that Louis C.K. thing where he was talking about how he was up late one night and he saw an infomercial to learn how to dance like NSYNC, and he said that he almost bought it, and he went, and I would never tell anybody. He was like, that would just be my secret. I would just know I could do that.
That anytime this one song comes on, I know how to do the dance.
Yeah.
Someone did not at me, but I did read the question, so forgive me if I don't remember your name. Somebody asked, so I see you coloring. Does that mean the comic is done?
Yeah, all the drawings are done. The inked pages they're all wrapped up. It's just a matter of finishing it all at this stage.
Nice.
It's very exciting. We're so close to the finish line.
So I ended up nursing Dave. No, I did not nurse Dave. Let me see. Add one more streamer to the mix, baby. That's what Maddie said. Because we have to start our podcast. Dry salads. Eric says, been following you since your Warcraft art in Imagine FX. Reason I got into art on a serious level. Crimson Daggers, baby.
Hey, I appreciate that. Yeah, you see, to anybody who's curious, you never know who you affect with whatever you do. Doesn't mean that you're trying to do that, but you just never know.
EJ Fudd had said that you're like Vegeta because you started a family to get stronger, but then you didn't realize it was inside of you all along.
I mean, yeah.
I thought that was really sweet. I thought that was really nice.
Yeah, it's exactly what happened. I was worried that I was just, the same way you fear anything new. I was worried that like I wouldn't be able to continue to do anything that's like super productive with having that much other responsibility in life that, everybody always talks about. It's like the fear that everybody else puts in you about having a family. It's like like in the worst way possible. It's that stereotypical thing of like, my life's over because I had kids. That was when my dreams died.
I feel like that's when life really started picking up.
Yeah, that's like like when we had kids is when everything went good.
Oh my God, it's like, I mean, everything was good before. It just intensified.
Yeah.
I cry all the time, and not because of
Not because of my abuse.
Yes, no, that makes me angry. That makes me fuming.
And I go, watch it.
And then I bring in sandwiches for him while he's in meetings, and then I just put poison in there.
Just slowly.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Having kids, you just get to experience everything new again. You find a reason why you love cooking because it's all so new to them. You find a reason why you love whatever, you get to enjoy it through their eyes.
We just get to see them experience the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's great.
Yeah, don't let my dreams be dreams. I have a handful of things on my New Year's resolution list that I am still working on. So, don't you worry. Don't you worry.
Yeah, microdosing rat poison to me.
Mm-hmm.
This is really good, babe.
I'm just making him really, really strong.
Babe, this is really good. It's slowly dying. As more of my hair starts to fall out. What?
Are you gonna homeschool him? No. Society is a weird place. We found a private school, so it's a form of a.
Don't tell them.
No, of course not. It's a form of a private school. That's all. That's all I was gonna say.
Okay, I was gonna say
it's a form of like a hippie private school, but not really. It's more of just like it's not as like uptight as like a religious private school. That's really all I mean. If you can talk about it, what kind of stuff did Blizzard tell you the promo image needed for the Diablo loot season art? Like, did they name specific loot pieces?
Yes, they gave me options for the loot. So there was like a handful of things that they sent over to me as just like favorites from people. So I went off of that for a lot of it. I can't talk a ton about specific things in the process just because I'm sure they wouldn't want me to. But some of the things were just, when you kind of start a job like that, you have like an initial pass that you do just to kind of find the feel of it. So you do some compositional sketches that are kind of loose, just offering up a number of ways to kind of tackle what they want to do. And after that, you kind of modify it as you go, or with very specific season things or whatever else, and then stuff starts to get a bit more specific. So it's that's probably the longest part of the process, because once I'm working, it's actually fairly quick. Like whenever anybody asks me how long one of those things takes me, I have to really think about it, because so much of the time is spent really just discussing the work and like figuring out like where it's going to go. So it's a little bit difficult to kind of, put in my mind like, oh yeah, when did it get greenlit completely? Like when did I actually start, and how much time was there after that? Because before that it was like weekly meetings with a bunch of different sketches and things and modifications to sketches and different iterations. So about 2.5 weeks is how long the work actually takes to complete for me.
Gross Girl said that it's gonna backfire and you're gonna become Rat Man. That small microdosing of rat poison.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, he kind of already is Rat Man.
Yeah. The rat.
Oh God.
The whole world stinks of cheese.
No, it doesn't work. Stop.
It's literally every time I do a voice like that for the kids. No, it doesn't work. Okay. All right.
Gross Girl says, when getting more involved with freelance work, how do you step up from doing small commissions into contract work?
Sorry, can you say that again?
When getting more involved with freelance work, how do you step up from doing small commissions into contract work?
That was just over time. Like I kind of built my career initially just doing work for, people's characters from video games, just their player characters and stuff like that. Like and then just whatever bands or different artwork for random one-off like RPG type of things. But it was kind of a slow build. I was very purposeful with it. Like every time I took a job, I was trying to kind of tailor my portfolio to sort of like lean towards the next step. So every job that I took on, I was kind of thinking about where I wanted to inevitably get to. I was like, I have this thing in the distance that I'm aiming at. So I'm making sure that my work can facilitate that leap to the next thing. And then I would apply myself to whatever that thing was. And then from there, hopefully keep on growing to the next place that I wanted to be. You know, like I would have a roadmap for getting to Magic the Gathering when I was young. And it would be like, okay, fantasy commissions from random people. Like I'm going to start with that. And I'm going to just, the money isn't really the thing that matters. I just need a reason to be working on these things. And I needed that pressure of somebody giving me a deadline and something to do. And, you know, obviously the responsibility of getting paid and delivering. So like that was my initial go. And then I would be like, okay, I did a fantasy painting. I've now done 3 of these. Now I can apply. Maybe I'm not good enough to get Wizards of the Coast or Dungeons and Dragons, even like, you know, below Magic. It's like, so, okay, maybe I can get to White Wolf Publishing. So I worked for them doing RPG stuff because they would hire younger artists. Fantasy Flight was another one of those that would hire younger artists. And then from there, you use that portfolio to then leap over into doing some, you know, Games Workshop stuff or just whatever other kind of RPGs there are. Like I was working for like War Machine. I did so many random things. And then I took my portfolio from those places and then applied to the tier below working on the D&D books, which was Dragon Magazine, which is still Wizards of the Coast. And then from Wizards of the Coast, from Dragon Magazine, I used those portfolio pieces to then ask if I could do work for Dungeons and Dragons. And then Dungeons and Dragons, I built up my stuff there. I was like, okay, now I can really push myself to like the limit. Just be like, all I need is to do great work for this, and I can finally leap over into Magic. So then I would do that, and then I'd get into Magic. And then from Magic, it was like the doors kind of open up, because then you're on something that's kind of artist-centric, and people like the work there. And if you say you're a Magic the Gathering artist, you carry some clout in like fantasy game circles and stuff. So then I could take that and get video game work, and then I could take that and get book covers and all these other things. So that's more or less what I did. I just really planned it step by step of how I was going to get to the end of this. But yeah, that's essentially how I went from doing private client work to contract work.
I think also your contract work has varied a lot. So the contract that you're under now is very different than some of the other contract, where it's like one contract is like you give us one big image every however many months, and then you can be like on a contract job that's concept art.
Yeah, they're all different.
Mm-hmm.
All of them are a little different.
So apparently you were active on live stream as early as 2008. Pretty sure it was 2007. Daggers was 2009. Someone was doing some digging.
There you go. Yes, that sounds right.
Eric asks, Eric Rivola says, have you ever had any further contact with Deviant Art Corporate since the hostage video? Sorry, the thing scrolled when I was like reading it.
No, not really. I think they kind of stopped doing their podcast. They were like trying to make a push to be active on things, and then I think that kind of trailed off. But that was what I was initially a part of for that hostage video you saw of me on DeviantArt.
In terms of a percent of what is shown on the internet, what percent of work have you done hasn't seen the day of light?
Oh, I don't know.
40?
Yeah, maybe 40%.
It's not quite half, but it's a lot. Over your entire career?
Yeah, my entire career. That's tough. Probably 40%. I think that's pretty dead on.
I'm good at math.
I mean, like just if the only thing that I had to kind of like point to for that example, like I did 100 and like I can't even remember how long it was. I want to say it was 150 page comic that never got released. That just exists.
God.
It's like I've done wild shit that just doesn't exist. So I mean,
I was waiting for that too.
Yeah, that was gonna be like a big thing if it ever came out, but
it might still. It might
yeah,
still.
maybe.
Derek says, sorry if this came up at some point, but will there be an audio version for Vale? I loved the Lichman. Voice acting was top shelf. A lot of that was just Dan.
No, I don't think so. That would be crazy to do a serious one.
Can you imagine Dan
I could do it.
Hold on. Can you imagine? Give me one of the lines.
I'm not doing any of the lines from it just because that's like one of the only spoilery things I'm not showing.
Well, just do your goblin voice. Like the witch voice, whatever. It'd be good.
For what?
For the lady, for the old lady.
Oh, I mean, I think like I actually really want to do more voice acting stuff because it's super fun. Dan and I did the first one together, the first Steve Lichman audiobook. So like half the voices are me, half are Dan. But we got so comfortable with all that stuff by the end that I was like, man, I want to do more of that. Like there's certain voices that like Dan can't do that I can do that like I wanted to be. Like the devil is my voice. Wow. Hello, C. What are you doing over there, friendo? It's like a lot of that kind of stuff. Except it's, I mean, probably a little more raspy than that. I got to remember what it actually is. But like, I want to go back.
It's more flamboyant than that.
Maybe. Dan and I both do Dracula. Well. And so it seems. Your bountiful bosom is more than I... Whatever. But anyway, I would love to do that stuff. It's so much fun. It's so much fun to just sit in a booth and just be a goofball.
I know. I told you, this next one, I have to be a voice. I have to do one of the voices because I really want to... I feel like that would be so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
Dave's going to produce a song for me to sing over too, so don't you guys worry.
Yeah, we're bringing back my electronic roots.
Christian says, will there ever be a time you'll be able to talk about the experience working on the Spider-Man games? Will there ever be a time you will be able to talk about the experience working on the Spider-Man games?
I can talk about that right now. It's not a big deal.
Guess what? That time's right now.
What do you want to talk about?
Working on the Spider-Man games.
Yeah. All right.
So why don't you just, for people who don't know, what did you do?
I created a couple of the skins, really. So I did the strike suit, the one that looks very much like a action figure. That was the prompt, was to do an action figure, like Spider-Man design. Like, what if Spider-Man was a toy? Like, make it like cool, a little exaggerated and like chunky. So I did like a bunch of versions of that, and then the other one was just kind of them saying like, what would you like to do for not Miles but Peter's suit? So I was like, oh, I want to do like a Kamen Rider inspired suit. So that's what I did for
like Guyver.
I think it's like Arachnid Rider. I can't remember what they called it in the game, but I designed that one. And yeah, it's really fun. I mean, it's fairly simple. They're very easy to work with.
The general process of it all was fairly easy too. You just kind of designed it and they went yes and no.
Yeah, I mean they pretty much went for like my first submissions for the designs. So there wasn't a ton of back and forth. And then from there, it was just a matter of like getting everything together and wrapping it all up, having the turnaround so that they could model it, that sort of thing. But nothing very complicated. I mean, I got the job to work on that because the art director over there was old Crimson Dagger, my old study group. I mean, I didn't know that. But he told me that. He's like, yeah, I actually was part of the streams back in the day. And I was like, oh, cool. And then what was I gonna say? Oh, and I had been working for Marvel, like, pretty consistently. So I had been working on the Miles comics, doing all of the covers for what arc was that? God, I can't remember off the top of my head. But I did like a number of those covers, and then I did a bunch of Spider-Man stuff, and actually did like a ton of Spider-Man stuff. Mm-hmm. And then I did a bunch of Venom and whatever, and basically, like, it made sense. I was part of Marvel. I had been doing that. I had a name doing that, and they knew me anyway. So it was just kind of a natural fit.
One of those Marvel covers was my idea.
It's true. It's very true. The one where who's that one?
The grandma?
Yeah, it's like the one where Aunt May is a spider person. Mm. That cover where like Miles and Aunt May are she's sitting in like a rocking chair knitting like a spider web design, and Miles is like all like flustered because he can't do it, and his looks like crap, and they're both knitting.
That was my idea.
That was Kim's idea. I really like that one.
Proud of that one. Is there a topic related about eye versus brain? It's a
eyes win.
I think that this person English might be their second language.
Okay.
About drawing what I'm going to try to translate what I think it says. Drawing what I know versus drawing what I see. This is new to me, or maybe I'm misinformed.
Oh, I get what you're saying. So it's like being literal versus being like
how you interpret
implying things, mm-hmm. and doing like what it's actually there, or how you actually see things.
Like how it reads versus like every detail, right?
Yeah, it's more about like impressionism type of stuff. But what's the question? Like, how do you do it, or
is there a topic related about that? Maybe like, is there any information that you can like point them to learn more about that?
I mean, if you look up like how to view things through like an impressionistic lens or something, like maybe there's resources on that, like how to start to see things that way. A really great artist that I like who does that very well is Richard Schmid. He has some really great art books that they don't teach you how to do that, but you can look at the work, and it's very much like a literal like interpretation of that. Like you can see like, you know, like examine paintings by impressionistic people who imply a lot of detail with like larger brush strokes or just loose edges all over the place, and kind of see like the purpose of it. Why? Like, where am I drawn to first when I look at this, and why? And then think about that when you're looking at the piece, like how it's painted in such a way to convey realism while looking, you know, somewhat like abstract and messy and a little crazy. It's like you can kind of get a better idea of how you perceive things, you know, because if just as a general practice for you right now, like you can look around your room, focus on a tiny detail on your shelf, on your wall or whatever, and then focus on that detail, and then kind of view everything around it in the peripheral, and you'll start to see that stuff's lost. You can't read every word on the other books on your shelf if you're looking at one book. You don't view that all at once. You don't see all that information in perfect detail, so you lose that stuff.
Although that is all very good advice, other people are interpreting that question as drawing from imagination versus studying. Or
really?
Drawing from life versus drawing from imagination. That's how other people are interpreting that question.
Okay, well, if that's what you're saying, then I mean, that's a difficult one because for me, I'm imagination first. Like I would primarily do that. Like that's kind of how I started, and I had to make myself study and learn the other way. So I mean, you can build that muscle over time just by making yourself kind of try to replicate what you've studied, from reality, and then bring that over into your, subsequent drawings without looking at that stuff, just from your imagination. Like how much of that stuff did you retain? Like that's a general practice that I do that helps me, especially when I was doing all my studies, is I would do a little bit from reference and then do that same kind of exercise without any reference and see if I could recall the information well enough to be able to bring that into my, painting from my imagination or my drawing from my imagination.
We have been streaming for 85 minutes. I would say probably another 10 minutes.
Oh yeah.
We're probably going to just take, what, you want 5 or 10 minutes?
We'll just do 5 minutes. It's getting super hot in here.
Yeah.
I'm like sweating and I have to take a shower tonight.
Okay.
I have not taken a shower.
It's all that rat poison making you all sweaty.
Absolutely.
So if anyone has any questions in the next 5 or so minutes, shoot them. Shoot them. If anyone knows what that very small reference is from, I would be so amazed. Is Dave buff yet?
Still fat.
Not fat, not buff. He's pretty good looking though. Eric Rivola says, if only they didn't need to ban the bird from the chat, the window could have stayed open.
I know.
Could have. It's probably sleeping by now. It's dark out.
Yeah,
Watch
I'm
you
sure
open
it
it
is.
and it's just like still going. There was
Every
that
2
crow that was
seconds.
doing that the whole afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
There's a hawk that lives in our tree in our backyard.
Huge hawk.
And I'm pretty sure it has babies because I hear like squawking and squealing.
Mm-hmm.
And it just flies over our yard sometimes and it just is so silent. But then you see this big shadow cross the yard. It's wild.
Yeah, it looks humongous.
My parents make that reference all the time. What is the reference? I want to know if other people know.
You don't know.
Yeah. Who, me?
No, the person in the
Oh,
chat.
yeah.
Don't pretend you know.
Yeah,
you don't know.
You don't know.
We don't know.
Shoot
you
'em.
know.
Shoot 'em.
Woulda,
Good. Over there. Shoot 'em. So what page are you on right now?
This is 16,
Out of?
23.
Woo! That's great.
Yeah.
You are flying through this.
Yeah, I feel pretty good about it. And this is just like right now I don't have barely any of like the shadows or anything in here, so I feel like it's looking pretty good just like this at the moment. So once I bump everything up in Krita, I'm gonna feel extra good getting this so close to the end.
Asea Espadez says, hi Dave and Kim, bye Dave and Kim. Mansur says, have you ever had to just straight up kick the shit out of a difficult client?
Kick the shit out of one?
Mm-hmm.
I've had to talk to a client. Like I've definitely done the thing where I just say like, you will need to hire somebody else. Like I'm clearly not giving you what you want, and like I'm down to just eat some of this. Like I don't care if you pay me. Like, this isn't worth the money to deal with this anymore. But I have like a big thing in me where, like, if somebody's pushing me and being completely unreasonable, I can't just like take it. So I just say goodbye. I'm like, all right, like, this has been I appreciate the initial offer, everything that you wanted to do. I was like, but I just don't think this relationship is working out, and I don't feel like I can really deliver what you want. And then I'll kind of just call it quits there if it's really bad. And I think that's only happened to me maybe like once or twice.
Dave is pretty firm in what he believes too, though. I mean, there's not really a job that he's working where he's just like, okay, whatever you want, and just makes a bad drawing. Like, he's willing to show them what they want and why it doesn't work, and be flexible with clients, but he's pretty good at convincing them. I mean, he's just good at his job. That's really what it comes down to. It's like, he's not trying to sell himself. They hired him because they trust him, and so he's good at showing why things work in a certain way.
Yeah, so if something's feeling like it's not going to be best for the final illustration or whatever, I always tell the client, because, why wouldn't I?
Mm-hmm. Yes, Brandon Muncie. It is from Swamp People. How did you get that? You must be a fan. How did you know? That was like one of our favorite shows. It
was a pretty popular show. I just wanted to feel like we were an exclusive Swamp People
club. I really don't
club.
feel like I knew a lot of people who watched that, because I would make that reference and people would just look at me like, what are you talking about?
Well, we don't run in Swamp People circles.
That's true. This weird guy says, would you say that going to a college for game design would be a good idea? It's just a community college, so it's going to be, it's only going to be 2 years and way cheaper.
I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends on the reputation of the school, the teachers, alumni, like all that sort of stuff probably would really sway me one way or another. If it's super reputable and they have a great track record with, people who went there, then it could be great.
EJ says, if you made a simple mascot for yourself like some manga artists do to address their audience, what would it be?
A simple one for me. Probably like a sexy cat. Like a really sexy cat.
If I had a mascot,
be a bowl of fucking noodles.
Yeah, no, not an inanimate. I would do an animal. I would probably do like a red panda.
Don't just step over that.
No.
Vibrant racism.
Boo! Boo!
Don't just walk right past that. I was being extremely racist to you just then.
Nice. Okay. Last question. Let me see. Sorry, let me look. Where was it? I just saw one. Kim reads it so seriously. That's because I replied to that. I have Anchorman syndrome. I just read what I see. Exactly how it is. Yeah. No editing. Word for word. This is my teleprompter. The chat is my teleprompter. Okay, last question is from Jacobo. Do your illustration skills enhance your comic art, line art? That's what I wanted to do. Get good at illustration so I can be at a Travis Charest Copiel level. I hope I'm saying those names right. And be undeniable.
Yeah, absolutely. Drawing is like, I mean, honestly, drawing is the key to me. Like, if you can paint, that's great. But if you can draw and paint, then whoo, then you have something that, you know, a number of people do not have. And I know that just because I started as a painter, and like I don't know, I knew how I hid all of my flaws, and I knew what I would have to do in order to get good enough to be able to do my paintings quicker, and it was all around drawing. And so I just spent a ton of time drawing, and that saved me. In like, let me just tell you like this, like a painting that used to take me, let's say, I don't know, 10 hours will take me an hour now, just because of my drawing ability. Like that's literally the time difference. It sounds like an exaggeration, but it's not. That's literally the difference. It's crazy.
And that's it.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming. Appreciate all the questions. Thanks for hanging out. If you want to help support, you can check the Patreon link in the description below. Years of content, $5, you know, $5 a month, but you can just sign up 1 month, go look at it all, and then bounce. I don't care.
Thanks for the warm welcome back for having me on camera too.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we'll be back. We'll be back next Thursday, same time. If I can stream before then, I will. But if not, Thursday's the time. And if you're a patron, you have access to the Discord, by the way. Don't forget that. Link your Discord to your Patreon account. All right. Goodbye, everybody. Love to you all.